Hello friends. Sir Francis Bacon, Sir Francis Bacon. As you can see, here's the most important things, few things as by way of introduction that we must keep in our minds. Of course, he was born on January 22nd, 1561 and died on April 9, 1626. An interesting point to note is, see here I have given Shakespeare, April 26, 1564, April 23rd, 1660. Yes, these two men, these two great men, isn't it? They have made such contributions to English language. And they walked the streets of London together. Together, that means same time. They are contemporaries, but you don't find any mention of Francis Bacon in Shakespeare's place or Shakespeare in Bacon's essays. That's very interesting. No? So something that you can think about. Alright, so he was the youngest of the 8 children of Sir Nicholas Bacon. 8 children. And Nicholas Bacon's second marriage is Lady Anne Cook. And in that marriage, he had 2 children. One is Anthony Bacon, the eldest, and the youngest, Francis Bacon. So, the elder brothers, they were half brothers and sisters. 6 children. That is in Nicholas Bacon's first marriage. And Anne Cook, Bacon's mother, she was a scholar. She was a translator. And she was very fond of, not fond of, her ambition, so to say, was to give the best possible education to her children, Anthony and Francis. Now, as you can see, he was born and brought up in court circles. Born in court circle, his father was his father was Lord Chancellor, Keeper of the Great Seal, Lord Keeper of the Great Seal. That means one of the highest ranking officials of England. Highest rank. The Great Seal. The Great Seal gives legality to all the documents issued by the crown. All the documents. So you can see how great a position was his father. So he was born in courts, brought up in court circles, and died in court circles. So that is a very important point that we should. That may be the reason why he might not have come into contact with these players of those days, dramatists of those days. Because those days players were considered as, actors were considered as vagabonds. But only see where is the court and life of court, and where is the life of the streets. So the dramatists probably, people considered that people had a low opinion about the dramatists. That may be the reason why he did not mention, Francis Bacon did not mention a word about dramatists. During the Elizabethan period, we have seen this nest of singing birds. About 1,500 plays were written and most of them were acted on stages by different groups of men, companies. But not even a mention of that you will find in Francis Bacon's essays. And that is very interesting, yes. So because he was all the time in court circles. Listen. And he had the rare privilege of growing up in a court circle and also, as I said, dying. And he left Cambridge in his 16th year. and he had a very good knowledge of Greek and Latin classical languages both and classical literature. He was a voracious reader, very greedy reader, we can say. And it is said that he was drenched in classicism. That is, drenched in classicism. Means he was immersed in, soaked in, you can say. When you go out in rain, you are drenched in, you get wet. So like that, he was drenched in classicism. Understand? 58 essays. It took 30 years for him to think about this. It is the product of the 58 essays and the products of 30 years of intellectual thinking and reading. The 30 years, not one or two. 58 essays about which he wrote in his dedication to the last edition, carrying all the 58 essays. He wrote in his dedication that to Duke of Buckingham, His Grace Lord High Admiral of England. He wrote like this, inverted commas, being of the best fruits that by the good increase which God gives to my pen and labor. That's what he did. So he was a religious person, but his morality did not go beyond political morality. Coins. So religious. His mother was a Puritan and cook. Religious, but his morality did not go beyond political morality of Machiavelli, the great Florentine Machiavelli, the author of The Prince. So these are points to be noted before we get into the essay problem, or considering him as an essayist. So he wrote like this. He is dedicated, in his dedication he wrote to Duke of Buckingham, His Grace Lord High Admiral of England, said, being of the best fruits that by the good increase which had given to my pen and labor. By God, which had given, which God gives to me, God gives to my pen and labor. Not had given, but God gives to my pen and labor. My labor, as I told you, 30 years of thinking, jotting down, that was his habit, jotting down. Whenever he comes across a good expression, he will write down. Whenever he comes across a good quotation, he will write it. And I said, he was a classical author. And in almost every page, you will find quotes from Tacitus, Cicero, or Seneca. Their views, quotations. That's why we say it's a classical author. That is Tacitus, the philosophical historian, Cicero, the great orator, and also Seneca. And on every page you will find. That's why we say drenched in classicism, we say. And then further if you go, you will find he has got a piercing intellect. Piercing intellect. He shoots arrow. His arrows are shot right in the bullseye. That means it hits the target. Understand? It is. Simple example you can say, studies serve for delight, for ornament, and for ability. The clarity of thinking, piercing intellect. Then seeing clear and thinking great. As I already said, shooting its arrow of expression right into the bullseye. Now going roundabout ways. Now prolixity we said. That is going, it's a beating around the bush, nothing of that. Straight away, he tells what is in his mind. So here, actually, this, what we should say is that each one of his sentences, you can see, each one of, they are epigrams, aphorisms. We can take one of those and then write on that, explain that, so maybe for days. Epigram, epigrammatic style is epigrammatic style. Or aphorisms, short pithy statements, aphorisms. And then he says, and at another point we have to see this. So, piercing intellect, seeing things clear, clarity. And another very interesting thing about Francis Bacon is he repeats. And he says that according to him, a good idea can be repeated. So what you find in the essays, you will find repeated in the advancement of learning. So he was not shy of them. He said a good statement or a good idea can be repeated. And along with the classicism, his classicism, you will also see equally important is his knowledge of the Bible, especially the Vulgate, Vulgate, Vulgate. Vulgate means common, Vulgate. Translation, common translation. And later on we have got AV. You know AV what is? Authorized version. Authorized version. Both this he was so familiar that again you will find quotations from the Bible. And this by the language of the Bible, the style of the Bible you will find simple and grand. And you will find reflected this in his essays. Simple and grand. Understand? About friendship he says, no? Advantages of friendship, it redoublet joys and cutteth leaf into half. Redoublet joys and cutteth leaf into half. Understand? Revenge is white justice. Simple enough. How many? Can quote a number of them. All the essays, all the sentences in the essays are quotable quotes on many occasions. Because as I have already told you, these have been collected by him from classical authors, from the Bible, and also it took 30 long years, not one or two. In between his statecraft, he was a statesman, he was a lawyer, as you know. He was a Lord Keeper. He was a political secretary to Earl of Essex. And then later on we see that he betrayed him. That's another thing. That's what I said, political morality. Although he was religious. And then he became Solicitor General, later Attorney General, Privy Councillor, Lord Chancellor, like his father, keeper of the, like his father Nicholas Bacon, keeper of the Great Seal. Listen. So, in spite of all his engagements, like say affairs of the state and diplomacy and so on, he found time, to collect this, then arrange this, marshalling of affairs, he said. Marshalling of affairs. Conference makes a man a ready man. Writing an exact man. So that's it. Reading a full man. Reading maketh a full man, writing an exact man, and conference a ready man. It is so clearly this. All the skills required for mastering a language. Reading, writing, and conferring means talking. That is LSWR we say now these days. LSWR. Listening, speaking, writing, and reading. That's what years ago he has said. Reading maketh a full man, writing an exact man, and conference a ready man. Understand? So that is. So we collected this, that's the thing, additional reading over a period of 30 years. In between this work that he was doing, statecraft, he was a great lawyer. He was made Baron Vernon. Later on, he was conferred the title of Viscounts and Albans. Viscount is below Baron, but sorry, above Baron and below Earl, E-A-R-L, Earl. So that was his, and he had a 30-acre, 30 acre garden, princely garden. He was very fond of that. He used to, it was said that he used to go for walks in his garden, 30 acres. And there will be a companion with him. And then he has a new idea or something, he will immediately convey that to his companion and he will write it down. So 24 hours in the day he was working, you can see. There are some people while sleeping also they get ideas. This is like that. Understand? And his essays are known as Counsels, Civil and Moral. Understand? There is a reading an essay is attending a counseling class or a counseling session. And then also it is according to him, Bacon himself said, my books, he said, a possession forever, wherever the English language and literature shall spread. So she was so confident about it. Hardworking and also very confident about his work. He said, wherever the English language and literature shall spread, my books also will be read. Understand? And in spite of all this, he was not so confident about English language. English language then was at the developing stage. That is, it was a vernacular. But Latin and Greek, they were classical languages. Sanskrit also. But Bacon did not know Sanskrit. So he said, my books will not remain for eternity if it is written in English. So what did he do, He, of course, we get it in English, but he got them translated into Latin, supposed to be a classical language. So he was not very sure about the life of English and how the English literature will develop later. He was not so sure. Although he said, wherever the language you take, my book also will be. And that is true. Is there any university in the world where Bacon's essays are not read and taught? I don't think. Academic circles, this is the best book for students. Isn't it? Counsels, Civil and Moral. So, these are some of the points that you should keep in your mind. And his school, he left Cambridge at the age of 16. But his school was the House of Commons. House of Commons was his school. School of life. Not academics, a school of life. It was there he acquired his vast knowledge of men and matters. That's because he was born in court service. He was born the son of Nicholas Bacon. Listen, Queen Elizabeth, when she saw boy Francis, she said, the young Lord Keeper. She remarked that. My young Lord Keeper. That means she saw in him a promising young boy. And those words later those words were materialized in him. As we have seen here also. And how did he die? That's another very interesting. He devoted his life to. He was He was the man who threw Aristotle out from the world of philosophy. He was the man who introduced the induction, observation and experiment in studying things. So once he was returning home, and then he was thinking about, at that time also, from a travel he was returning. And he was thinking, what would be the effect of refrigeration, freezing objects, what will be the effect? So he got down and then he bought a fowl, a bird, from one of the people there, cut it open and filled it with snow to find out what would be the effect of refrigeration, whether we can preserve things like this. What happened is they was already suffering from fever, and then the fever aggravated and he died. So it was pneumonia the cause of his death. And that too, not for his private or personal business or any personal interest, but it was to find out this. What would be the effect of refrigeration? What would be the effect of freezing? Whether we can preserve things like this. And he died of pneumonia. It was on April 9, 1626. So now you got an idea now. But Alexander Pope in his epistle 4 of his essay on man, what did he say? What did he write? In the way that he would approach things, he wrote like this: the wisest, brightest and meanest of mankind. He was wisest, he was brightest, meanest. Why? Because two things. He was political secretary to Earl of Essex. Isn't it? He was political secretary to Earl of Essex. And when it came that Essex had to face trial, Bacon stood against him. Bacon argued case against him, his own benefactor. So there you find he's a tainted person. You find he's a bit treacherous, betrayal. And that is what prompted Alexander Pope to write like this. Another point is that he was tried for bribing, corruption, financial corruption. In spite of all that, that's the reason why Pope calls him meanest of mankind. Mean means of low character, because he betrayed his own benefactor, Earl of Essex. The second, of course, is corruption. Because he took bribes, that we cannot say he was meanest. But because most probably he high life, lot of money is required, luxury. As I already told you, 30 years garden, 30 acres of garden. A princely garden he had, and he was maintaining. And you can imagine what kind of a life he was living. That may be one of the reasons that, say, as we said now, when you are spending too much and your income, they don't both ends meet, then what will happen is that you will take bribes. At a position like that, a person who held such positions, Lord Keeper of the Great Sea, Lord Chancellor, just like we can send a finance minister to that level, in higher than that. So that's why Pope sums up in his epigram, the wisest, brightest and meanest of mankind. And the third one, you just forget, because he stands much above the third adjective, much ago. It was said of Bacon that even when he was convicted, there were reasons for that. Even then he stood above that. His fame was so great. So the third one, meanest, usually what happens is we forget. Because the other areas, say, just an essayist. He, of course, it's not a new idea, essay. Essay means an attempt, that's the meaning. Make an attempt. It was there, Frenchman. The father of essay was Frenchman. Monday. But the father of English essay is Sir Francis Bacon. So this is by way of introduction. Now we will take up the qualities of his essay, characteristic of his style, the contents of his essay, and so on. We will deal in detail in the next few lectures. So very often you get a question now for university exam that Bacon's style, or Bacon as an essayist, or Bacon's contribution to the English language, or Bacon as the father of English essay. So I am trying to answer that question for you. I hope that you will take interest, and you will share. If you benefit out of this, you will share this with your friends also. Okay? So see you bye. So wait for my next, say, few more lectures. A few more lectures. Maybe 3 or 4 short lectures. And I am sure that these lectures will be useful to you to answer that question Bacon as an essayist. Bye. Have a nice day. Enjoy your life.